So you just left? It was a few days after the whole debacle with the Hamiltons, and I was sat in my office, a cup of coffee that had long gone cold in my hands, and a still furious William, who could not comprehend the situation, sitting opposite me. Yes, what was I supposed to do, William? Tell me. After I had come back from a music shop, I met William at the funeral home and told him everything that had happened. He wasn't impressed, to say the least. You were supposed to talk him into it, William yelled, narrowly missing hitting my cup of coffee that was sat on the desk between us as he swung his arms while he spoke. Hey, watch it! I hastily picked up my cup of coffee and held it safely in my hands. I doubt I could have talked him into it. He seemed really upset by the whole situation, I said as I took a sip of my coffee and then set it back down. Well, there's got to be something we can do, William sighed. The Hamiltons are set on Jakob playing at the service. I tapped my fingers against my desk and looked through the brochures that were still there, a jarring reminder of the previous meeting that was held there. William suddenly clapped his hands together in front of me, the noise echoing throughout the room, and I unwillingly jumped in my office chair. What did you do that for? I exclaimed as I held a hand to my chest. William looked at me in amusement before he spoke. I'll go speak to them, man to man. Yes, because brute caveman strength is the only way to fix this situation. Ew, please don't. The amusement in William's face fell as he answered me. Why not? I tilted my head to the side. Was he really asking that question? You don't exactly have the best track record with emotional families, I said, as I recalled back to the moment that made me say this. Flashback. It was 2015, and our funeral home was just starting out. William was manning the reception desk when a family walked in, 2 children and their parents. Welcome to Restwell's funeral services. My name's William. How can I assist you today? The family stepped forward, tear-stained faces and all. I'd like to arrange a funeral service. William nodded and brought out a form and pen for the family to fill out before bringing them into the office and finalizing details. Of course, you'll just need to fill out this form and include any details you'd like us to know about the deceased. They took the form from William's hand and walked away to begin filling it out. After a while, they brought it back and handed it to William. Here you go, they sniffed. Okay, let's have a look. William scanned the form and landed on the part of the form that allowed the family to place personal belongings like jewelry, scarves, hats, etc. with the body of the deceased during the viewing. The box next to jewelry had been ticked and the word necklace had been placed in the subcategory. I see you would like to have a personal item placed with the body of the deceased for the viewing. Do you happen to have the necklace with you today? William asked. The family brought out what William thought to be the necklace and placed it on the reception desk in front of him. As William reached out to pick up the necklace, his hand halted. This is the necklace you'd like to place on the body of the deceased? In William's hand was a tattered, red, dog collar. Yes, Bruno never took it off. The family nodded together tearfully in answer. Bruno is a... William wandered off, not quite sure of his answer. A dog, the family answered, confirming William's doubts. William's eyes wandered off to the side for a while before he brought them back to meet the families. I'm not quite sure how to say this, but, William cleared his throat before continuing. We don't hold funerals for animals here. The family looked between themselves in disbelief, and one of them, a short, middle-aged woman, stepped forward. Bruno was our family, she gestured to the family. He was their brother, she pointed to her daughter and son. And most importantly, the woman trailed off as she looked at William. William looked back at the woman, confused. Bruno was my son, the woman ended with a sob. William stifled a laugh as he brought a hand up to his mouth. Is this a prank? He asked. The family looked at William in confusion. What? The woman started. William took his hand away from his mouth and laughed openly. Come on, where are the cameras? William said as he looked around the reception area comically. Rose, you can come out now. That was very funny. Ha ha. The family looked on as William laughed sarcastically and walked around the reception desk, making a show of looking for hidden cameras. Sir? The woman approached William gently. You did a great job. You guys really got me. Where did Rose hire you guys from? William stretched out his hand for the woman to shake, but the woman just looked at it. This isn't a prank, the woman quietly said. You can stop this now. The jig's up. William gave a toothy grin and brought his hands up to either side of his face, gesturing surrender as he spoke to the woman. This isn't a joke, the woman reiterated. My family is grieving, sir. This is hardly a laughing matter. Her husband piped in from where he stood, still in front of the reception desk. William? William turned around at the mention of his name. What's going on here? It was at this point that my mother walked out into the reception area and addressed both William and the family. We're trying to arrange a funeral service, the husband said, as he turned to my mother. William looked between the two in confusion as my mother walked to the reception desk. I see. My mother picked up the form that the family had filled out. And the service is for your dog? The husband and wife both nodded at my mother. My mother walked back towards the family and gave them a sincere smile. I apologize. Westwell's funeral service does not cater to critter family. As she explained the situation to the family, William came up beside my mother and looked at the family blankly. If you would like to hold a service for your pup, there's a local veterinarian who is amazing at his job. I can refer you if you like. My mother smiled gently towards the family and led them towards the front door of the funeral home as she explained to them where the veterinarian was and how the family could contact them. After she had finished, my mother walked back to the reception desk where William was standing. What was that? William said in complete shock. Just a funeral for a pup. Totally normal, my mother answered nonchalantly. William straightened up and looked at my mother in disbelief. That was real? I just acted like a complete fool in front of those people. William explained as he pointed to the front door that the family had just exited from. Yes, you did, my mother chuckled and softly patted William's shoulder as she walked back to the office as if nothing had happened. End of flashback. That was a totally different situation, William shouted. I laughed out loud as I remembered my mother telling me the scene she had witnessed. Sorry, no can do, William, I said jokingly as I emptied my cup of coffee and set it back down on my desk. William sat back in his chair dejectedly and covered his face with his hands. Rough day, I chuckled and immediately ducked as William sent the seat cushion flying towards my head. After picking up the cushion and allowing William to cool off for a couple of minutes, he and I were both sat rifling through the brochures and pamphlets that I had placed on the table in search of another musician who could play at the Hamilton service, when the desk phone rang, jolting us both out of our seats. William and I exchanged a look, both willing the other to answer the phone. It's your desk phone, William pointed out as he sat back in his chair and braced the back of his head in his hands. I sighed and gave him a look before I reached forward and lifted the receiver, silencing the phone. Restwell's Funeral Services, how can I help you today? I answered. There was a low cough on the other side of the phone before a voice spoke. This is, Matt Hamilton. We spoke a couple of days ago about my daughter Ainsley's service. My eyes widened and involuntarily shot to William who, at my look, sat up in his chair and raised his eyebrows in confusion. Mr. Hamilton, I silently mouthed before I replied. Yes, I remember. What can I do for you? Put it on speaker, William mouthed, aggressively motioning towards the phone. I placed the phone on the table and pressed the speaker button for William to listen. I just wanted to finalize the arrangements for the funeral service, Mr. Hamilton said. William inched closer to the phone, and I signalled for him to stay silent with a finger to my lips. Of course, Mr. Hamilton. I also wanted to contact you about the family friend you chose to play at Ainsley's service. William's fervorous hand-waving cut my sentence short, making me forget what I was about to say. Not yet, William mouthed with a shake of his head. Yes, I actually wanted to speak to you about that, Mr. Hamilton said, ignoring my sudden cut-off. William and I shared a bewildered look. You did? I asked confusedly. Jakob called me after you spoke to him that day, Mr. Hamilton explained. William stood up in front of me and placed both of his hands on the table, leaning onto it as he listened intently. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Did Mr. Hamilton know that Jakob wasn't going to be playing at Ainsley's service? Is he calling because he wants to cancel his service and take his business to another funeral home? Yes, that's right. I did speak to Mr. Ivanov that day, I replied slowly, ensuring that I sounded confident in my words. William kept his eyes locked on the phone as he listened to Mr. Hamilton's words intently. I just wanted to thank you. My eyes shot to William's, who was staring back at me in confusion behind his furrowed eyebrows. Thank me? I replied with clear confusion in my voice. Yeah, I spoke to Jakob. He called me to ask which song we would like him to play at the service, Mr. Hamilton said with ease, as if William and I weren't both sweating bullets in our respective seats. William motioned for me to keep talking as he kept his eyes on the phone. Oh, yes, I asked Jakob to get in contact with you regarding that. Good to hear he spoke to you. I widened my eyes at William and he repeated the gesture. Thank you very much, Rose. You've been an immense help, Mr. Hamilton said, and I mumbled back a welcome and goodbye, placing the phone back in its holder and sitting back dejectedly. What the heck? William had both hands pressed against his temples as he sat back in his chair, slumped into the shape of it, almost as if his body had been deflated of air. I slowly slid back into my own chair, my eyes focusing on something in the distance, but not really looking at anything. I was in a daze. The whole situation had me reeling. Jacob had agreed to play at Ainsley's service after he had adamantly told me that he wouldn't. "I thought you said he wasn't going to do it," William said as he sat back up. I blinked my eyes into focus and looked at William. He didn't. William sat forward and pulled his phone out of his pocket, swiping the phone determinedly. "Well, you spoke some sense into him apparently," he said, eyes still on his phone. I looked down at the phone in William's hands and then back up at William. "What are you doing?" Trying to figure out what changed his mind. William suddenly stood up, causing me to jump back involuntarily. "I'm going to their shop." William adjusted his clothes and made his way to the office door. "Wait, what? Why?" I stood up and followed him to the door. William stopped at the door and looked at me for a while. "Would you like to come with me?" William raised his eyebrows at me questioningly as he sarcastically held his hand out for me to take. "Cut it out," I said, as I slapped his hand and pushed him out of the way to walk through the office door to the other side. I heard his laugh behind me as he quickened his pace to walk beside me. "Be nice," I said. "I'm always nice," William replied as he stepped out the front door onto the pavement and locked the door behind him. "Sure, that's why Mum and Dad put the funeral home in my name and not yours." William came to an abrupt halt and turned to face me, but I kept my eyes forward, purposefully busying myself with the lock, avoiding eye contact. I could feel him staring lasers into the side of my head, and after a while he huffed lowly and stomped forward. Rude. The word travelled in the wind to my ears, barely loud enough for me to hear, and I smiled smugly to myself.